Good evening, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. I wanted to talk about the language difficulty again, as I've discussed this many times before, and how just in the same way that as soon as you communicate on the internet, emails are fraught with the potential for terrible misunderstandings, because you haven't got all of the expressions, you haven't got the tone, you haven't got the inflections in the language, and so especially if you're from I don't know, in my case from the north of England, where the sense of humour is extremely dry, bordering well, for some would say sarcastic, but it's a different kind of humour, and easily goes wrong when it's without all of the emotion and the expression and the facial thing and the whole thing. It can easily go wrong. Well, what I found when Beth and I went out today, we encountered a cultural barrier between the way that my upbringing has brought me up and the way that Beth's upbringing has brought her up. Now we're talking about ingrained emotional responses to certain situations, and what happened for us was that two of these things, the way that I think of things and the way that she thinks of things, clashed. And once that clash occurred, then there was the usual cut off of talking, and then once the talk has stopped and there's that element of moodiness. Now we're not discussing here whether something was right or wrong, but only that the response to a condition, to a situation, was different based on the way that I was brought up compared to the way that Beth was brought up. So there you have it, a cultural difference which is totally ingrained. Now, as soon as you get that, there's upset, and as soon as upset comes into it, then there's a separating. You know, if you think of when you're actually loving someone, when you're in good affinity with them, you're kind of like this, aren't you? You're hand in hand. And then when something happens that upsets one of you and is judged unjust, so one makes a judgment against the other, who in return makes another judgment, and it's well, you said, and then the other person said, no, yes, but I said that because you said this. But what happens is that insanity comes into it then you've got the desire, no matter how subliminal it is, no matter how held down, suppressed, hidden, that urge to hurt it surfaces, and then you're hurting each other. And of course we may have heard the concept through Jesus Christ of turning the other cheek, but it's a very difficult thing to do. And as soon as somebody hurts you, then you want to respond and react, and this is totally the wrong thing to do, because then from there things escalate. And when they escalate, the truth is that neither is actually arguing the point of what happened then, at that moment. Then they're counting up things that have gone wrong in the past that have added to the idea that that other person doesn't care. So now you're saying, yeah, well, what about when you, and I'm not talking about Beth and I now, I'm talking about just the hypothetical situation that one has hurt the other. Yeah, well, you said that, didn't you? Well, yeah, but I only said that because you said this. And, well, what about all the times that you've said that? And I say, are we forgetting, perhaps, all the times that you said this? And so it goes. I would offer the opinion that actually neither is receiving incoming calls at that moment. And what it requires is, it requires at least one of you to withdraw, to say, I'm not playing anymore. I'm not doing this. Because what will happen, and for the married couples who are listening to this now, you will know that it can go south so quickly and so badly that you're actually packing bags and making plans for the future without each other, and discussing who has what. And it doesn't have to go that way, but what it requires is that at least one of you recognizes, by at least deciding at some point in the past, when you've managed to get through one of these storms in which nobody is thinking in the moment anymore, and you realize that it was all over nothing. It was all over something that was so very, very simple, that if someone had just said sorry, oh, sorry, and that sorry didn't come, so boy, it's a roller coaster. Now, these are the kind of arguments that happen very frequently for some people, and what you have is, you have those kinds of relationships where sniping is the norm. Now, my own parents had a marriage that was a war zone, and I can't count the number of times that I sat at the dinner table and my mother would slam the plate of food down on the table, and she would say to me, "Tell your father there's his dinner." And my father would end up going like this. And who was right, who was wrong, does it matter, especially now, so many years later. But those kind of things you get left with, and sometimes without your knowledge, without your awareness, I should say, they can be the way that you start to respond to given situations in the same insane way, because none of it makes sense, especially when you look back. After you've realized that the last thing, you might be sitting there in the car with your bag packed on the passenger seat, when you realize, wait a minute, this isn't making any sense, and then you take your bag and you go back. This is the kind of thing in the past, in the long, hopefully forgotten past, I've seen this scenario and experienced it, and I've seen it in other people, I've seen it in other couples, and I do remember reading of the work of one particular counsellor, and she said the key moment in counselling is to get the couple before they stop caring. And that's the key thing, and that's what I found to be key as well, is the moment that you start thinking that, well, it doesn't matter, you've got to snag it right there, before it gets there, and you've got to get back in, and even though you don't feel like doing it, you have to say, look, for my part in this, I'm sorry. And hopefully the other will respond, and it will be a little bit lacking in affinity for a little while, but eventually you'll start to talk about things which are totally neutral, like who was that on the phone, what time will dinner be ready, and so on, and then normality will return and you'll be okay. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Sometimes it can be tough, and you have to, the way through it, the way around it is through it. Good luck. Bye for now.